Hi, I'm Rebecca from the Flock XR team. We are often asked what is a great first experience with Flock XR, and this is for young people and educators as well, to get them into it, to get them to see some of the great features that it has. This project is something that I have led in well over 20 sessions now, with people as young as year 5, so about 9, all the way up to adults. This project will allow you to see some of the key features of Flock XR whilst building skills for a more detailed project. Let's get started. Use the link below to open up Flock XR in your browser. We are then going to set up our scene. Now, if you haven't got a blank screen like this, then you just need to go to the burger menu, you go to project, and then you click new, and that will give you a blank world to work with. And I always describe this as, imagine you're in deep space and there's absolutely nothing, and you're about to build this really cool 3D world in this random part of space. So at the moment, it's just completely empty. So let's fill it up with something that we want to make. Now, if you've used Scratch before, then you'll be familiar with block-based coding. And here in the middle are all of our blocks. So this is our toolbox of blocks. And we just drag blocks in to the code area and start building our scene that way. So I want something to happen at the start, which is an event. So I'm going to go to events and I'm going to grab the start block. So what I'm saying is at the start, so when I press play, run these things. So run these things that I put inside that start block. Now we've got a completely blank empty space at the moment. So let's build our scene. So we're going to go to scene. And the first thing that our world is going to need is a sky. So I'm going to drag the sky in and instantly we've got a color there. And you might have noticed, oh, that matches. There's a whole color palette here for you to choose from. But don't spend too much time on this bit because I'm going to show you something even better to do with the sky in a minute. So I've got our sky block and then we need something to stand on. So let's grab the map block and then you can start to see, okay, and if I click and hold in my canvas, you can start to see, okay, there is my map. There is my ground to walk on. So just press play to reset the camera there. So now that I've got those basic building blocks for my sky and my ground to walk on, I can start personalizing it. And the first thing that I want to do is make this sky even more interesting. So I'm going to go to materials and then I'm going to find this list of colors. And I'm going to drag it in here. And can you see that when I get close, you get the yellow highlight around that oval shape? And that means that I can drop it on. And look how much cooler the sky is now. So I really love playing around with the colors here. And I sometimes like to just pick the ones from these first two from the row. So I'll go for the darker one first, and then I'll go with the lighter one. And that tends to do a really lovely moody effect in the sky. But you can play around with that and do whatever combination you like. You can also add a couple more colours as well if you want to really deepen that effect and make it even more special and personalised. So it's up to you. You can spend quite a long time just playing around with those colours there to get it exactly how you like it. So I'm going to leave mine there for now. And then we've got this map block. So take a look at this whole block here. There's a lot of options for you to choose from. The first one, it just says flat at the moment. So this is the type of terrain that you're going to walk on when you are moving around in your 3D world. So there's different ones to choose from. I think I will go with, I'm going to go with circular dip, I think. There we go. And you can see that instantly it's changed. And you'll notice as well that there are reflections from the sun or the light source coming off the ground. So you can actually start to see this sort of very 3D terrain going on in our space there, just pressing play to reset. So I've chosen my terrain. Now I've got this option for material. So if you take a look, there's loads of different options for adding a material to that ground, to that map. Now, we've got some really lovely ones. I think the brick is probably one of my favorites, so I'm going to go with brick. And then now I've got a green brick. So I could keep it green, or I could change the color. So if I wanted to have a very realistic looking brick, I might go for a brown color. That's interesting. Or I could go for a yellow brick, which is quite a nice effect as well. I think I'm going to go for brown though. And then we've got this final number at the end. It says alpha 1, and that just means how see-through it is. So 1 is completely solid, like this one now. But if I put in 0.5, let's just do that properly, like so, you can see that it starts to become a little bit see-through. So if you want your ground to be a little bit see-through, and that's very see-through, then you could change that number if you wanted. But I think for me, I just want it to be 1, so completely solid. And now when I start to look around, you can see I've got some really interesting effects. So just in a couple of blocks of code there, I have managed to build my sky and my ground with my map block, and I've completely personalized it. This is exactly what I want it to look like. And at this point, you could pause the video and just really play around with this and get it exactly as you want it. Or you can move on to the next step straight away and we can start adding in a character. Now, we've got these start blocks, and it doesn't matter how many start blocks you have on your screen, it will always run that code at the very start of the program. So what I like to do is I like to add in new starts for different parts of my scene or my game, whatever I'm doing, just to keep my code tidy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in another start block, but you don't have to. You could carry this on in this sequence if you wanted to, but I'm not going to do that because I want to put my character in here. So I'm going to go to Scene, Objects, and then here you can see that I've got a character block with lots of exciting looking options there. So first of all, if I really want to name my character, then I can. So I'm going to go to Rename, and I'm going to call my character Ember because I love that name, and I'm going to press OK. So my character is now called Ember. And I don't have to stick with that first character. There are loads of them for me to choose from. And also I can personalize them too. So I really like this new elf princessy style character. So I'm going to go for that one and press play. And there you can see her there. And I can also, I think I might change the scale. So at the moment, the scale is 1. So that is how the model was originally designed. That's the size. But if I want to make it a little bit larger, I could go 1.5. And then it's just a little bit bigger on my screen. So you might want to play around that. X, Y, Z is just where it is positioned in the 3D world. So X, Y, Z all at 0 is right in the middle of that 3D world. So I'm going to keep it there for now. I might want to move it later, but I'm just going to leave it where it is because at the moment when I press play, it's exactly where I want to see it. So I'm going to leave it there. I've then got all these amazing color choices down here so I can really start to customize it. So I'm going to go for a princessy type look. And we've got lots of skin tones to choose from, and you could choose whatever skin tone you like. But actually, if you wanted to go for more of a fantasy character, you could go to materials here and grab this block and just drop it on there. And then you could have a purple character or a green character. So things that are a bit more like fantasy characters. But if then you wanted to go back to a skin tone, then you can just drag it out the way and go back to using a skin tone. And then you can choose all your different colors for your characters and really personalize it however you want it to look. And again, feel free to pause the video and personalize yours as much as you like. So my character is there. I'm happy with how it looks. but it's in this shape. So it's standing like a T. And this is actually called a T-pose. And it's something that 3D model designers use when they're designing their characters because it allows them to see every single part of that model. So a T-pose is a really useful pose for 3D model designers. But it doesn't look very interesting in our actual game unless we wanted them to do a T-pose for some reason. So what I want to do now is I'm going to bring my character to life by adding in some animations. So I'm going to go to animate and look at this block here, switch animation to idle on Ember. Now it's remembered that word Ember because I just renamed my character to Ember. So whatever variable you just used, it will remember that in the blocks, which is quite handy. So switch animation to idle on Ember. Let's see what happens when I press play. Okay. So now my character is doing an idle pose. Now, idle pose, you will see this in animations, you'll see this in games. It's a way of getting your character to kind of do nothing, but not look like they're completely static, like completely still. So Ember at the moment, she's doing nothing, but there's a little bit of subtle movement in her. So that idle pose is really, really good for when the character's not really doing a lot. And if you've played 3D games before, you might find that your main character has a really specific idle animation that goes along with it. So maybe you've gone and got a drink and come back, and your character might be tapping their feet or looking bored or they've fallen asleep. And that is a really cool way to build on that idle animation. So my character's doing nothing, and you'll probably see when you play games now in the future some really fun different ways that this has been used. But also you might see a character off in the distance that you might need to go and talk to, but they're not really doing much until you go and interact with them. So they'll be stood in some kind of idle pose. So idle is really cool, but what about some other animations? So have a look down here and you can see there's some other animations. So I'm going to click wave. And now my character is waving hello. You didn't just see that because I'm not recording my face, but I did just wave at my character. And I have a habit of waving at my character every time. So we've got here switch animation to wave. So when we use switch animation, that switches the animation. So it will literally just do that until we give it another animation to switch to. So we've also got play animation. I'll just show you that one. And that just plays the animation once and then stops. So switch animation is a good option for this one. And now Ember is waving hello. Let's get her to say hello as well. So I'm going to go to text and I'm going to drag this block in, and it already is set up for me to say hello. So let's just see what happens. There we go. She's saying hello. Now have a look at the block. So again, you've got loads of customizations. I could get Ember to say whatever I want. That is for 3 seconds. If you set it to 0, it will say it all the time. If you want it 10 seconds, 2 seconds, it's completely up to you. Make sure it's your character's name that is saying hello or whatever you want to say hello. And then you've got the text color. So you might want it to be a different color. And then you've got a background color as well. So make sure, think about contrast. So use a very dark color with a very light color so that it's easy to read on the screen. You've then got that alpha word again. So if you want it to be a little bit transparent, you could put a different number in there. And then we can also change the size. I wouldn't go much bigger than 25 for most projects, but it's up to you. You can play around with those numbers and see what happens. So I've got my character now. When I press play, it's running this sequence. So it's built my world. My character is there. She is waving and she's saying hello. So let's bring in another animation. So what I can do is I can duplicate blocks. So I've just right clicked and then I duplicated, and now I've got 2 animate blocks, and I'm going to change this to run. Now, something a little bit odd might happen when you first use Flock XR and you're first using this say block. You might see something a little bit odd. So you might expect it to wave for 3 seconds and then start running. But let's just press play and see what happens. It started running straight away. So why has that happened? Now, this is actually a really useful feature in FlockXR. And once you know how it works, you are like, that's really helpful. So let's just have a look at the end of this block. It says start. So that means when I start this block and start saying hello, start the next block straight away. So what's happening is for a millisecond, it is waving, but then it's running this block and going straight to this block. So when we actually look at it, it looks like all it's doing is running. But if I change that to await, then what it will do is it will wait for the 3 seconds that it's saying hello, then it will move to the next block. And this is actually really handy because this option allows you to build a sequence like this without having to bring in an extra block to delay it, which would have been this block here. So it's actually made my code more efficient by having that little block there. And you've now got the freedom to choose which way around you want to do it. And now I've got this set up, I can start building a whole animation sequence. So I'm going to duplicate and I'm going to say and I'm going to use the Windows emoji keyboard. So I go Windows dot and I'm going to put a heart, heart running. Okay, so there we go. Hello, I love running. So I'm starting to build my animation sequence and I can keep going and going and going and really building this up. And there are lots of things that you can do with this sequence of blocks of code. So it might be reciting your favorite poem or one that you've written yourself. It could be the lyrics for your favorite song, like a bit like a karaoke. It could be teaching somebody something new. So maybe you've learned something interesting in the last week or so and you want to teach it to somebody else. You could get your character to do that. So there's lots of things you can do. But I always just end my sequence just by having that idle at the end. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to press play. And there we go. So now I've got Ember saying hello. I love running. And then it just tidies that sequence up with that idle at the end. So you could literally do whatever you want now with all those blocks of code and just duplicate and keep going. But I'm going to stop there and just show you a couple more extra things. So in FlockXR, you've also got these buttons here on the left-hand side underneath the canvas. So if I click plus, and you can see I've got loads of different objects and characters and all sorts of things to choose from. You'll spend a lot of time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the tree and you can see how you get this cross like that. Wherever you click your cross, your tree will appear. Now, you can ignore it if you want to, but you might have noticed that on the right hand side, you've also got a new start block with that object in it and all the code. So you can go back to the code and you can start personalizing it. So maybe you want a yellow tree, for example, or you could choose a green tree, a different color green, or a blue tree. It's completely up to you. You can change the scale. You can even reposition it here. Okay, so you could go over here if you want to, but actually we've got all sorts of things that you can use here to position it and style it as well. So let's say I want to color it. I can click on the color palette. I could actually choose my earthy color palette from here, and I could go for that green, and then I click on here, and then I can click wherever I want something to be green. It will keep coloring things in green. So if I want the trunk green as well, it can do it there. But then I can go back to my color palette. I can click on the brown and I can have my brown trunk. So this color palette is really cool because it allows you to do whatever color you like pretty much. So we could go for neon colors. Let's go for bright neon. And let's add, should we go for a blue trunk? There we go. So I can really personalize that tree in lots of different ways, either over here in the code block or using the color palette, but also I can move it. So look at this one on the next section. When I click it, I can click on my tree and I can use these drag handles to move my tree wherever I want, and up and down as well. So I can use it for that. But also there's this rotate one. So I see this as kind of like three hula hoops. So whichever way you move your hula hoop, it will move the object in that direction. So if I wanted to, let's just say I could twist it around so I could look at different views of the tree, or I could be a little bit wacky and turn my tree upside down if I want to, like that. And that is how it will appear in my 3D world. So that is a really great one to use. You might also, I'm going to put another tree on. So let's put a tree here. Let's say I wanted that tree to be quite small. I could use the scale one, click on it, and then there's this little diamond in the middle. If I click and hold that, I can actually pull it really small or really large, and it will keep the scale proportions. So I could have some tiny trees as well in my scene. So there's lots of things that I can do to build a scene. And you could play around with that for ages, building all sorts of things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one of my favorite things to do in Flock XR. So I'm going to put a heart on, and I'm going to actually do some coding with this heart. So I'm going to give it a sensible name, because at the moment, you'll notice that when you drop objects in, it gives them names like Object 2, Object 3, Object 4, which are difficult to remember when you want to call them in your code. So I'm actually going to rename this one. So rename it to heart, because I'm going to refer to it later. So I've called it heart, and now I'm going to go to materials and look at this block, the glow block. So let's see what happens when I press play. Wow. Okay. So I've now got a glowing heart. Now, that is cool enough, but let's make it even more exciting by going to scene, effects, and then particle effects. Now, this block is huge, but that's because you could spend ages here with the settings, doing some amazing things, and you could really, really personalize how this looks. But the default settings, if you don't want to get into all of these numbers, are amazing in themselves. So I'm just going to press play. I'm just going to make sure it says heart there because I want this to happen to the heart. So let's see what happens. Wow. I just love it. Absolutely love it. So just the default settings are amazing. But if I just want to tweak it a little bit, you can see we've got a shape here. So there's shapes for you to choose from. So you could go, if I'm looking for the butterfly, there's the butterfly. So you can have a butterfly, and then the start and end is just the colors, what it starts with. So it started with a white, and then it's slowly turning blue. You can see that on the screen. So you could try different ones. So maybe you want to start it yellow and end it up purple. Let's just see what that looks like. Ooh, that makes a lovely effect. So those three are probably the ones that you're going to use the most in most scenarios, but you might want to dig into some of the other ones as well. And it's all about just play around with them and see what happens. Um, One thing that you might want to know is this force thing. So at the moment, Y is set to 2, and that just means that it's pushing the particles upwards on the Y axis with a force of 2. If I change that to 10, then I'm increasing that. So now it's gone really, really fast like that. But if I want it to be slower, then I could go a little bit slower, which creates, that's a little bit more like a smoky fire or something like that. So they're just the key ones. I'm not going to show you more than that because you can play around with it yourself, but they're the key ones that are going to get you to some really cool designs. And the very, very last thing that I want to show you, now I've just kept my character just there because movement would be another video. We're going to keep it there for now. But actually, you can move around your 3D world using the arrows on your keyboard. So if I move my mouse so that I'm facing the direction I want to go, and then I press the up arrow on my keyboard, then I can actually look around my 3D world like this. And then I can go wherever I want in my 3D world and I can add whatever I want. So if I want to add a log cabin, then I can. And then when I press play, I can look around and there is my log cabin. So you can just see with some of those skills, we can start building some really awesome 3D worlds. So I hope you've enjoyed this introduction code along. And that's it. Thank you for taking part in this code along. You could build on your skills now by creating a full karaoke scene for your favourite song. You could get it to recite your favourite poem or one you've written yourself. You could use it to teach someone something new. You could copy the dance moves of the characters and create your own real world dance sequence. Or you could create a relaxing ambient scene like our one available here. Whatever you decide to do next, enjoy using FlockXR and thank you so much for supporting us.